Hello and welcome back to more Let's Make a Game. This is part 2. I actually don't have a huge amount to talk about this week. I didn't get as much writing done as I'd hoped I would, but I'm going to do a video anyway because I want to make sure I do these weekly. What I did was some brainstorming. I wanted to refine the idea, and I have a lot of ideas, but it's not all on paper, really, and let me get rid of this. For some reason, when I'm recording full screen with Fraps, it keeps that damn number in the corner, I think. But I can hide that, and should be fine. All I have is like one page here, which is just some loose ideas that I was just jotting down before recording this, just so that I would have something to show, and I'll add on to this as I go. So, last time I was talking about what I wanted to make, and what I want to do is I want to do like a point-and-click adventure type game, except with more game focus and less focus on, well, the storytelling and the cinematic aspect of it, like a lot of other companies are going. So I'm thinking, so basically what I need to do is first stop and take a look at what makes point-and-click adventure games good. And to me, and that's basically all I have to go off of, so that's what I'm going to use, a point-and-click adventure game, what makes them good is a combination of the story and the puzzles. Personally, I love puzzle games. I'm completely different than some other people in that regard. Some people loathe them, but I like them. So I want to keep the puzzle elements, the figuring out how to open the door that's locked by using bolt cutters to cut a chain, or popping the hinges off with a screwdriver, that kind of weird logic stuff. I mean, even like the weirdest adventure games have some sort of logic that exists within their universe. Like, in real life, you would never think to, say, grab a bird and use the beak like a pair of shears to cut a chain. But if you're playing a game where it asks that kind of thing, usually it makes sense within the logic of the game for you to do that. It's when it doesn't that it's a problem. I mean, you can't look at, say, Monkey Island and say that everything that happens in that game is perfectly logical by realistic standards. But it makes sense within the standards of the game, and that's the kind of thing you need to go for. I also like traditional puzzles, sliding blocks, and I don't like numbers as much, and I hate wordplay riddles, so I probably won't be using any of that kind of thing. But we'll see. It all depends on what happens. So, but with an adventure game, it's kind of like the storytelling, the setting, the characters, and the puzzles that kind of pull it all together. A lot of times this is also threaded with humor to keep people playing, because you want to see what the next joke is. This only works if the jokes are good. Anybody who's seen my Unwritten Tales review know the kind of adventure game that I dislike is, you know, that one. But like Resonance was really good, and it wasn't overly funny, although it had some funny bits. It was the story that really drove things. There was some like interesting twists and characters and so on. So I want to like try to preserve what I like out of adventure games. So what makes an adventure game? Interactive objects. Being able to walk around and just look at things. Sierra Games did this really well. LucasArts games were a little bit less known for that, but just funny little bits of dialogue and interactions and feedback as you just interacted with random stuff, even if it had absolutely no point within the confines of the game. The other neat things are always the conversation trees, and ignore the barking dog. The conversation trees are another interesting bit. You have just the dialogue's important. It needs to be good wordplay. You need to be able to discuss things. LucasArts was famous for good conversational humor in trees. I don't want to necessarily go that far because they have like 8 million options for everything, and but you need to be able to interact with and talk with, and there should be hints in the dialogues as to what you need to be doing. I mean, that's kind of the point. The dialogue is there to kind of nudge you in the correct direction when you get stuck, but it shouldn't necessarily be required to progress the story unless it makes sense. Like, you're not going to, say, get past the guard without talking to him. But if you have a way of knocking the guard out, you should be allowed to do that before you talk to him if you just assume you want to bypass him. That kind of thing. So there's basically, there's going to be a focus in the game on the storytelling and the puzzles. But I want to give you more to do than just pointing and clicking and diving through dialogue trees. So that's where this other bit comes in, where I want to try to put in some action platformer bits. I just realized you have no idea. I'm sitting here like waving my arms all over the crates like a maniac and making like shapes as I'm talking, and it's not doing any good because nobody can see it. I need to do that with the mouse or something. Let's see here. Yeah, I want the gameplay to be like a third-person action platformer type thing. So you need to be able to like pick up and move stuff around, equip things. Jumping is important, but with third-person action, jumping is always a bit of a tricky thing because you need to be able to tell where you're landing, and that's actually become a little bit more difficult with more advanced rendering engines, come to think of it. It's like if you're playing like Guild Wars 2 and you're trying to do the jumping puzzles, it gets hard to tell where you're going to land because it uses realistic shadows. So when you jump, the shadow goes way off into the middle of nowhere. And like the really old third-person platformers like Mario, Banjo-Kazooie, and so on, you always knew where you were going to land because there was this nice little dot of shadow directly underneath the character. So you could judge your jump and whether you were over what you were aiming for by the shadow and not the character, and trying to figure out this 3D squished 2D depth perception non-existent thing that can be a real problem for some people. So there needs to be some kind of a indicator for your jumping location. Like I don't want to do like a selection ring. I'll think about it. But I mean, the shadow dot is the easiest way, but it's also not really realistic because character's not walking around with a light shining directly from atop of their head and leaving a perfect circular shadow underneath their feet. So that'll take a little bit of thought. The hardest thing for me is probably going to be getting this camera to work. I've messed around in Unity a few times with cameras, but getting it so that it doesn't pass through geometry, I'm going to have to look up some tutorials for that. It's going to be one of the first things that I work on when I get to the actual coding side of things. So that's something for later, but I'm not really looking forward to that. But I do want it to work out like that. I haven't decided if I want to put combat in. I mean, there should be like adversarial enemies, but not necessarily like "Rarg /// they explode" type enemies. So taking this kind of gameplay idea and building stuff around it, which is kind of backwards, honestly, but it's kind of like how I prefer to work on this sort of thing. It's like I look at the mechanics and then I build the game around it, because I can come up with ideas for pretty much anything, writing-wise and plot-wise. But, okay, the plan is to make it fairly short, because I'm going to be working on it myself and I want to actually conceivably finish it. It's not even going to be really the plan to like market this thing. It's to put it together and see if it works. And if it does, see if I can bring in some help to actually pull the whole thing together. This is assuming, of course, that the game ends up being good. If it ends up being crap, then, well, I'll put it out free and whatever. So it's only going to be maybe an hour long with only like 2 or 3, maybe 4 locations. There should be at least some kind of adversarial enemy type between 1 and 3. Whether there's actual combat or not, I don't know yet. I still need to think on whether combat would be good for this format. And there should be at least 1 to 2 NPCs that you can interact with. And I want to tell a complete story over this like mini hour thing. It should be something that can be extended, should I decide to extend it. I mean, once the engine's up and running, if I have all sorts of ideas and things, and it's easy enough to work with, I can just like keep adding stuff to it, and that'd be great. Or I can do like release like the 1 hour chunk and then do a longer game within the same setting or something. That'd be awesome. But that's something to worry about for later. I'm just worried about this little 1 hour mini storyline. Mostly I want to tell a complete story because I don't want to just do something and have it stop, or just do like a test room thing, because that's boring and it's not really fun to show that to people if it's just like, okay, now talk to this guy and he's got holder dialogue, and then go out here and you can fight some enemies. And I mean, I'll be doing that at first, but I want to actually do something with it that's at least conceivably finishable for me. So basically, it's going to be like a little short story game. That's kind of a good way to think of it. We get to my story idea. This is very rough, so there's a lot of pieces missing from it. Bear with me. But I kind of wanted to do, I was sitting there thinking about it, and I wanted to do like a spoof of your traditional adventure story thing. Like, for some reason, it's always some kid that's set off to save the world for no reason whatsoever. The guy with the guns and the weapons and the armor and more money than God and all the experience stands there and it's like, you are the one who must save the world. Have a gun. That kind of thing. It's, So what I came up with was, the story will follow, a girl who I have not named yet because I haven't come up with a good name yet, who will share a name with some famous fictional or a legendary hero in the setting. It may be a spoof of an existing movie or book, or just something I make up for within the terms of the game, whatever. And her parents were weird. Maybe they were just like really into Final Fantasy and named her Cloud or something. It happens. I'm sure it does. And the kid probably wants to throttle their parents later in life. But hey. So she's spending the summer with her nutty grandfather or uncle or some other non-direct relative who thinks that just because she shares a name with this fictional famous hero that she should be doing what he did in all the stories, like, say, slaying a dragon. She gets really snarky, but goes along with it, thinking that the worst that it would be like an iguana or a dog with wings taped on it or something like that. But somehow this grandfather or uncle or whoever it is actually found something dangerous and expects her to beat it, and that's the mini storyline. This obviously needs fleshing out, but that's what I'll be working on next week, is like developing these ideas. I need to flesh out the storyline, figure out exactly what I want to do with that. Like I said, it's going to be really short, so it's not going to be some elaborate thing. Like, I might change the story entirely, we'll see. But I also need to sit down and look at what I want to do with the mechanics and literally map out exactly what functions I need. Like jumping, how much air control do I want in the jumping? You need to be able to move forward, backward, strafe, left, right, turn based on the mouse. The camera needs to be implemented. How much control does the camera actually need? How smart does it need to be? I need to be able to interact. I need to make a list of all these little features and things that I want, so that I have basically a checklist, so that when I actually start making the game, I can just check things off as I finish them, like camera done, twink, and then I know what I have left to do, so I'm not sitting there constantly coming up with, like, oh, I actually need a dialogue, so I need to put a dialogue system. No, I already know that I'm going to need a dialogue system and what features I need in the dialogue system. Like, do I need triggers? Do I need, like, nested trees? Like, one conversation leads to a sub-branch? That kind of thing. So that's going to be a little bit annoying to do. But next time I should have that done, or at least started. And then once I finally have that list and my story kind of fleshed out a little bit, I can then turn around and start actually working on the engine. At which point I'll have more to show than just a freaking text document. I suppose next time, if all I have is a bunch of stuff to read off, I'll just play something randomly on my freaking ginormous Steam list. Ugh. Oh yeah, Borderlands 2. That's my next review. I just did. Should have gone up yesterday, actually. No, the day before. Within the last 2 days. Should have gotten the They Bleed Pixels review. I'm kind of. It's just unfortunate that it has that slowdown issue. It'd be a much, much more enjoyable game without it. If they ever fix that. Whew. Oh, yeah. I also have an XCOM Enemy Unknown pre-purchase. I don't know what state my System Shock LP will be in. I'm planning to do parts more reliably starting next week instead of like every other day. There's just so many distractions and things whenever I sit down to record. It's bizarre. It's like the universe knows I'm trying to record, so that's when everything decides to happen. But, yeah, I really should make that more of a regular daily thing. But regardless of where that's at, I am going to be doing an XCOM Enemy Unknown series for my first playthrough of it because I so loved the first game. I actually picked up XCOM UFO Defense at the same time as I picked up System Shock. Come to think of it. It was in like a bargain bin. It was actually like a package with XCOM and Terror from the Deep. Like a 2-pack thing, if I remember correctly. Yeah, I think so. I think a review that I read in a magazine at that time said it best. XCOM's the kind of game that you'll pick it up and you'll play it the first time and you'll be like, what the hell is this? I'm so terrible at it. And then you'll shelf it. But then like 2 months later, you'll suddenly have the desire to come back to it and then you'll play the hell out of it. Because that's exactly what happened to me under that one. It was bizarre. But it's a very good game. Very deep game, surprisingly, especially for a DOS game. So I'm really, 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 really hoping that the XCOM Enemy Unknown will be good. But until my next video, Toka out. Oh, wait, and I'm going to be trying to do these to make a game updates on Fridays, and like I said, weekly. Regardless of whether I make any progress or not, I will still try to talk about something related to the game. Until then.